Can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. No. No.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened. We had some technical difficulties, but thank you everyone for your patience with us. My name is Jada Wright Green. I am the founder and editor of Heritage Salon, which is a nonprofit dedicated to African American museums, historical sites, and homes. And most recently, we have started to tell stories of Black history. Tonight, I am excited to be speaking and having a conversation with Kevin Scott, the Grand Historian of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I want to thank Mr. Scott as well as the corporate headquarters for Kappa Alpha Psi for allowing us to have this great conversation. Also, special shout out to my husband, who is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, Daryl Wright Green, who is my Superman right now, helping me through all of this. So again, my apologies for the technical difficulties, but we are going to jump right in. Listen, y'all, I have been watching what's going on with the men of Kappa Alpha Psi and what they're doing to preserve their history. And it was like, this makes sense to talk to them, to have this conversation. So I want to jump right in and just give you a little, introduction into everything and formally introduce Kevin Scott, Grand Historian, and get into some questions so we can learn about what is going on with the members of Kappa Alpha Psi and how they're preserving their history. So the men of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity have an extensive history and tradition of preserving their legacy. Since their inception, the organization and its founders have been intentional with the implementation of preservation of their history. They have understood this assignment and committed not only on the local level in their chapter, but on a national level to accurately identify and preserve documents, paraphernalia, and artifacts. Now, me as a lover of history and a woman in the world of Greekdom, yes, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I personally understand the importance of this great task of preserving history for future generations. Our new incoming members to all of our organizations need to understand what steps were taken to establish our entities. Not only that, but we can't move forward in our future without a clear understanding of our history and stories. So, as I began to research the Divine Nine organizations and understanding how they all commit to preserving their history, I could not locate a more extensive, thorough, and forward thinking plan than what has been created with the Brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And here at Heritage Salon, we are committed to sharing stories of Black history. So it was befitting that we have a conversation with the Grand Historian of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So to my Divine Nine members this evening, any other organization that is committed to preserving your history, I implore you to listen closely this evening. So now I want to introduce you formally to Kevin P. Scott. He is a native of Chicago, Illinois, and a retired 32-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department, where he achieved the rank of detective in 2000. He has investigated a wide range of violent and property crimes and various crimes against children on the far south side of Chicago. Scott is a 1998 initiative of the Chicago alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi. He has also served in various capacities at the chapter, most notably as senior vice president, historian, and reporter. He currently serves at the Chicago Alumni Chapter as its historian, an office he has continuously held since 2007. He recently held dual chapter membership, where he served as in Evanston Alumni Chapter as vice president and historian. He also previously served as historian of the North Central Providence, and he also performed 2 years of research that uncovered new information about Kappa Alpha Psi's fraternity founder, Paul W. Kane burial place, and unrecorded historical details of the founder's life. In 2013, he was elected the 15th Grand Historian and has conducted a wide variety of projects to the benefits of preserving and celebrating the fraternity's history. A few of his most remarkable endeavors include the establishment of the Kappa Archival Recovery Initiative, the composition of a centennial history book for the Chicago Alumni Chapter, video interviews of 7 immediate past Grand Pole March or national presidents, the establishment of a scholarship in honor of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity founder E.W. Diggs at Indiana University Bloomington School of Education. In addition, the renovation program of the H.H. Holloway Museum at the fraternity's international headquarters and the Kappa Room at Indiana University's Black Culture Center. He's also currently writing the 6th edition of the story of Kappa Alpha Psi. He earned a Bachelor of Science from Chicago State University, completed a Master's of Organizational Leadership degree at Lewis University, and he's married to his wife, Regina, who's a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. I won't hold it against her. I'm sure she's lovely, a sister in Delta, and they reside in Chicago with their daughter. Mr. Kevin Scott, I am thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for being here this evening and agreeing to, telling this story that we're going to tell, and you telling all about Kappa Alpha Psi and what you guys are doing. And so I want to jump right in and ask you this first question. So This is an important initiative to preserve the history of the organization. So, if you don't mind, I would love for you just to tell us a little bit about the initiative. And what I mean is the Kappa, the recovery initiative that we spoke about and that you guys have. This is the one that I saw that I was like, oh, this is it. This is it.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come on here and be able to talk about the initiative that I have to be able to recover items that are so important to Kappa's history, and to be able to share this information not just with some of my fellow fraternity brothers, but also share it with your audience, who I would assume are mostly members of other Divine Nine organizations. Um, this is so important for them to be able to initiate something similar to this in their respective organizations, so that their history can be better preserved. And also, Mr. Scott is my dad. You can just call me Kevin, and it's fine. Thank you so much. I'll just take the liberty of calling you Jada, if that's okay as well.
Yes, you know what? This is the Southern Belle in me. It's just say Mr. Doctor. I can't help it. It's just, but I'm
I
gonna get back.
understand. No problem.
So I did some research and I found out that one of your founders, um, Guy L. Grant, was really involved in making the history and telling the story. And so it's almost like it's threaded into the fabric of Kappa Alpha Psi. But tell me what really prompted you to just, as a member, to just say, because your background is, a police officer, a detective in Chicago. How did you go from, that and having this interest to, go into this whole initiative to preserve the history?
Thanks for asking that question. So, just for your audience benefit, I stand on the shoulders of three of Kappa's founders who served in the same role before me. So you have Guy L. Grant that you mentioned. We also have Byron Kenneth Armstrong and Elder Watson Diggs, our premier founder amongst the 10 founders. But in 2010, I was elected to serve the fraternity as its North Central Province historian. The fraternity is divided into 12 geographical regions that we call provinces. So by this time in 2010, I had already been serving my chapter, Chicago Alumni Chapter, as its historian for a few years. Within my position, I had been conducting research of events that had occurred in its past and its members. And what I found was that there had been indications of certain events, but there were very few tangible source materials to corroborate my study. So furthermore, I lacked the available physical articles. The lack of available physical articles demonstrated to me that our chapter, the province, as well as the fraternity, lacks some of the archival artifacts for the posterity of our history. I also became keenly aware of the large amount of fraternity artifacts that were slipping through our hands for potential retention and preservation, when I noticed the large amount of these items starting to show up on eBay and other online auction sites. I learned that some are in business to attend estate sales, and some others purchase entire storage lockers without knowing the contents ahead of time. Within these storage lockers and estate sales are fraternity artifacts of the member who either passed away or the family has just left them behind. So a large range of fraternity artifacts that these people acquire is expansive. It could range from something as simple as copies of our fraternity's quarterly periodical, the Kappa Alpha Psi Journal, vintage photographs, video recordings, our membership badge, or esoteric items such as our ritual. So from learning of these occurrences, I knew that something needed to be developed to decrease the likelihood of this occurring.
It's so true. I have been places or seen kind of on social media, you see people that are homeless, or sometimes someone, has on a shirt that you know is not a member of your organization. Or like you say, you can go to eBay or even in some places in Amazon, they don't know that we're members of the organizations that we're purchasing the items. So this is just so important that, you know, this is happening so we can stop having our stuff just, you know, sitting in a local Goodwill for anybody to just go and buy, anyone to buy and just wear it and go out the door. It's tough. And so I think this is really good because this is going to help stop that whole process. And we are seeing all these people just wearing our stuff. So tell me, how is this implemented on the local chapter level? Do you guys have historians on your local level that kind of follow suit with what you guys are doing on a national level and, you know, on your regional level?
Well, yes, we. So what happens typically in our organization is that you will have someone like me that's on the national level will implement an initiative, and from that initiative, it will be passed down to each of our provinces, our geographical regions that comprise a fraternity, and from there, it will trickle down, hopefully, to our chapters. So even though I hold a national office, I don't. It's not administrative to the extent where I can tell anyone what to do. I provide this information, and then the historians, either on the province levels or the chapter levels, will adopt this initiative, and they will start to implement this initiative in whole or in part, whatever it is that they feel as though they have the capacity to be able to do. They implement that on their local levels.
That's great because, you know, sometimes those you know, hidden treasures are at that local level that we just don't know about.
Yes.
Well, I want to know, Kevin, what made you personally say, I want to take this on? I want to help preserve this history, put together, you know, this whole initiative to try and make sure that you're preserving the legacy and the history of Kappa
Right.
Alpha Psi.
Well, as mentioned in the previous question, this initiative was born for the realization that we were missing key opportunities to preserve and recover our history. This was originally observed on the local and regional levels by myself, but once I was elected to the national office of Grand Historian, I recognized the need for a greater effort to be placed on the preservation of our history. I conducted a thorough inventory of all of our archives at international headquarters and discovered that our collections were missing many items that I imagined would actually be retained there. Some of the items were missing from our archives because they had to be discarded due to water damage. I imagine that a large percentage of the items were just not collected merely because someone just had not thought of it. I then take the opportunity to create the National Recovery Program in order to cast a wide net, inform the membership of our circumstance, and appeal to them to identify their Kappa items for donation.
Well, that's great because you've taken on a big job, but you're doing.
Well, you know, it's like the old adage when they say, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time."
Yep, yep,
So, you know,
yep.
you're not going to get it accomplished all at one time. It's something that's so large and expansive. You're not going to be able to put your arms around it um, at, at at one particular sitting. And so,
Yeah.
I've been here in this position since 2013. I've made some significant strides to be able to recover so much of our history that we did not have before. And when you think of it, Kappa's been here since 1911. That's 111 years that we've been around. So that's a lot of history to try to be able to shore up. And of course, for you, for Alpha Kappa Alpha being around since 1908, that I don't know how much of your archival um, documents and photographs and things of that nature that you have on hand, but no matter how much you have and how much is missing, every day that goes by that you don't take efforts to be able to recover that information, you're losing it because our members die. Different things may happen where they're cleaning something out, and either purposely or on accident, things get thrown away. So every day that you're not trying to recover that stuff, there's a chance that you're losing it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. They're constantly finding and understanding things, and I know that you uncovered some information about one of the founders or whatever. But most recently, Alpha Kappa Alpha found out that we have been misspelling the name of one of our founders, and so this is we've been saying something for so long, and they literally found out from the family, going through historical documents, checking to see and understand. And so now we can correct that. So, that's something that's just, we wouldn't have known unless we would have been taking the time to really study and understand. So
Right.
I know we talked about this before, that there are challenges that you're going to face in attempting to preserve, collect, and keep the history safe in, the right hands. And so we talked early this week a little bit about, one of those challenges. So I want to talk about that a little bit. When someone unfortunately passes away, a member of your organization, one of the things that I applauded was that you guys have set up a way to make sure that if someone from the fraternity passes away, there's a place and there's a plan, there's a document that they can use in order to say, something goes here. I want this to go to, my brothers in the fraternity. I want this to go to my son if he's a legacy. So we kind of talked about that sensitive topic of, what if, someone passes away? When do you contact them? And so what's the document that we talked about that, someone can fill out so you're not stepping on anyone's toes or when widow's toes and calling too soon or calling too late after everything is gone and dispersed?
Right, right. So you're speaking of some of the challenges that we encounter with archive recovery. So because of the fact of what I told you earlier about what I noticed, how we were missing these artifacts and trying to formalize a method to be able to recover them. It's greater than just me physically going to individuals and asking them if they would donate to this archive recovery program. It's involving the entire organization so that we can all pull in the same direction to be able to accomplish this task. Because I'm one person. I can't be everywhere. I can't knock on everybody's door. I can't pick up the phone and call everyone. So this is a job that really affects the entire fraternity. So we need the entire fraternity to be able to grab hold of that rope and all of us pull in the same direction at the same time. So in order to help to formalize this, I created a form set that our members can utilize. This form set that you see on the screen there, that is the form set for the Kappa Archive Recovery Initiative. And it's a fillable PDF that's available to our members. It's on our Grand Chapter's website where members can download this, and they can either print it out and fill it out manually, or they can type into it on their computer, download it, and save it. But what it allows them to be able to do is be able to identify the items that they have in their possession. So if you're talking about a member who has been in our organization for 15, 20 years, most folks would not imagine that that particular member could have anything that would be significant enough that we would look for an item that they would possess. Well, that's actually incorrect, because we've all, as members, attended regional meetings that we call our province council meetings, or sometimes our grand chapter meetings that we casually call conclaves, and we get a lot of material when we go to these places. We get if we go to our grand chapter meeting, we'll get what's called the State of the Fraternity. It's a booklet that tells about all the different things, programs, and different things that have happened over the course of time under that particular Grand Pole Marks administration. And it's all contained within that book. We also, when we go to these functions, the people who register, they get gifts. Those gifts are unique to the event that you show up to. So lots of times they will have inscribed on it the conclave that we attend, along with the date and sometimes the location, the state that we're in, and so on. So after we leave that location, all the items that we accumulated there are now history. So if you leave there and you happen to still have that in your possession, now that we're in the process of trying to make sure that we have copies of these things, we need to try to recover those things, because we want to make sure that we, number one, we have it in our archives, and because we have the benefit of having a museum at our international headquarters, we want to be able to showcase those items and show them to people who did not have the opportunity to attend a conclave in 1939 or whenever it was, and
Right.
show how the transition of these items over the course of years has changed. Because whether it is that we have, just like your periodical for Alpha Kappa Alpha is the Ivy Leaf, ours is the Kappa Alpha Psi Journal. Our journal has been running continuously since 1914. We were the first one out of the Divine Nine to have a periodical of that sort. There's only 2 years that it did not run. It was 1918 and 19. But ever since, we have run that periodical continuously. And so what I found from doing that inventory also was that we only had about maybe 55% of our journals. So I went on a mad quest to be able to recover those journals. And I'm happy to say that today we've recovered, I think we're at in the 90 percentile range of journals over the course of 111 years. And so if you don't start this and you don't ask the question and you don't seek it out, you won't find it. But first, you have to be able to identify these things, which brings me back to this form. The form set you see has a variety of things listed on this very first page. It shows about paraphernalia. So clothing items, whether it's a letterman's jacket or a letterman's sweater, other types of clothing items, you can check the box, and then right next to it, there's a fillable space where you can say what that item is, whether it's an item that you receive when you crossed or some sort of official jewelry or whatever it is. This form has enough space for you to be able to designate those items. And why that's important is because we all have a day that we don't know when that day is going to be, that we're going to leave this planet. And so this form set allows you, just like if you were filling out a will, it allows you to be able to designate what you want done with these things. On this form set, you can designate certain items that you want to donate to the fraternity now. And then you can designate other items to say, you know what, these things over here, this is important to me. I just want to hold on to it for myself, or I want to pass it on to my legacy, who is my son or my nephew or some other person that's close to you, your pledged son, someone that you want to pass it on to. And why that's important is that when people pass away, if they don't designate it, that person who's left there to kind of pick up everything that you left behind you, that's a lot of stuff. We accumulate a lot of things just in general, but in terms of fraternity items, that person will want to follow your wishes of what you want done with it. But if you don't express that, they won't know. And so this is a way for the fraternity to know for items that you want to designate. They can send this form in, the completed form, into our international headquarters in care of the Grand Historian. I'll get a copy of it so that when that person passes away and the other copy goes to the family knows what you want done. But if they don't know, many times, surprisingly, they will just throw it away. Or those estate sales that I spoke of, that stuff will end up in an estate sale, and they will buy the whole lot of everything. And the next thing you know, it'll be in an online auction site such as eBay. And then non-members will have significant items like, this is my life membership pin. You wouldn't want someone outside of your organization to have one of these. So we want to be able to try to have a sense of control about what happens to these things, whether it's a donation to our archive program and our artifacts, or if you just want to pass it on to a loved one, such as your son, and you want that son to have your brick or your scroll or whatever it is. You want to keep it in the family rather than to have it to kind of be thrown away.
It's so true. I recently lost my mother, and
I'm sorry about that.
thank you. I mean, I had an idea because we talked about what to do with certain things, but you're in an emotional state and you don't know. And I can't imagine not having my spouse, my husband, and like, what do I do? I don't know, So
Right.
that's great if that's written down. It's just so forward thinking. Like, let's be able to stop this estate sale, and on eBay, and all over the world in the wrong hands, but in the right hands of the fraternity
Yes.
or your legacy. I mean, it's wonderful, and I hope that all of our Divine Nine members in all organizations
Sure.
take heed to this and make this a part of their process. So I just want to know, what is a quick advice you can give someone, even not necessarily a Divine Nine member, but any organization or even a family that wants to preserve their history? Where should they start? I mean, just a small starting point of this.
Well, if you're talking about the organizations, and then I guess this would apply to people outside of organizations, the very first thing they should do is talk to that family member. That family member, like if you've got some matriarch or patriarch in your family, start by sitting down and speaking with that individual. You'll learn so much about their life and things that you kind of probably took this person for granted because they're always there, they're always talking, but they're not going to always be there. So find out different things about uh, aspects of their life that were really important to them. And then if there are physical items that correspond to those times in their life, you start having a conversation about where are those things? Can I see them? And
Mhm.
then you'd be surprised about how much more of a conversation will open up from that dialogue. Um, and especially if those items are related to our topic this evening regarding archive recovery for our organizations, you start having a conversation about, okay, well, I'm not trying to be morbid. I don't want you to go anywhere. But one day when that would happen, what would you like done with these things?
Mhm.
And I would be sure that they would have an answer about what they will want done with it. Some people would say, "Hey, look, when I go, bury me with this life membership pin."
Mhm.
That is not uncommon for our members to have something like that done. But now you know what they want done because you can't assume that that's what they want. They might say that they want something else to be done with it. And so you have to start by having a conversation. And then from that conversation, you would do just what I was just speaking of in regards to identifying items. So all of us who've been in our respective organizations for any length of time, I guarantee you've got a closet, you got an attic or a basement where all this stuff is shoved in that you're not trying to display, like your beautiful bookshelf that you got behind you. So the things that didn't make the cut for the bookshelf, they're in a closet someplace. And
Mhm.
they mean something to you, but not enough to make the cut to be on the bookshelf.
Mhm.
So so those things you're trying to make a decision. Okay, what should I do with it? I don't really want to throw it away. I don't really want to put it on the bookshelf, or I don't have room for it. What should happen to it? So you have that discussion, you identify those items, and then you let your family know what your wishes are.
Mhm. 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 By the way, this is your frat's bookcase and all that stuff. He gave me a little lonely shelf back here of books.
No, that's what you call community property. What's
Yeah.
yours and what's yours is yours.
Yeah. But you're right. I have a box of things that I'm not going to display, but it's things that I want my daughters to have, because they will be pledging Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. But
You mean your money doesn't pay for anything else?
they need to go the right direction. But no, seriously, there are things that are just there that I do want them to have. And you're right, something that if I want the sorority to have, because it's just so important that it's in the right hands. So
Sure.
tell me, what has been the response since you've been heading up this initiative and being very proactive with everything? Tell me about the response from the Brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi.
The response for the initiative is slow, but it's steady.
Okay.
Most times there are basic items that trickle in for donation, and every once in a while there are priceless, irreplaceable items that are recovered. Either way, it really adds up and enhances what we previously had. So, in
So,
other words, no one's lining up out the door and down the street and around the corner to say, "Here, take my Kappa stuff." No, that's not happening. But you know, the longer this program persists and is around and it's being talked about, the more people are approached and realize, you know what, I do have something, and I think that this will be a benefit to be able to share.
yeah, that's true. And hopefully this, what we're doing tonight, some of the brothers can hear about it and get excited and call you tomorrow and give you that box of stuff that's sitting in their garage.
My phone is ready.
So tell me, what are some of the historical jewels or just fascinating history that you've discovered since you've been doing this?
Well, I'll tell you, about a week ago, I recovered a fraternity membership badge that's from the 1940s.
Wow.
It was found in its original box from our official jeweler. And again, that was on eBay. And so I recovered that, and which is huge. I mean, you don't find items like that every day, and especially in its original packaging. On another occasion, I requested one of our senior Kappa members, who was friends with a brother that was initiated all the way back in 1922. His wife at that time was still living, and the senior Kappa contacted her and requested that we come to her home to get the Kappa items left by her husband. She agreed, and she arranged for all the items to be brought up from her basement. When we arrived, the entire living room area of floor area was filled with boxes. I took all of them home to my home, and it took me over a week to sort through everything and put them in order. Once they were organized, I discovered that about 80% of the items did not belong to her husband. They actually belonged to our 16th Grand Polemarch, C. Roger Wilson. He was Grand Polemarch in the 50s. and another 10% belonged to his brother, past North Central Province Polemarch, C. Leon Wilson. And the remainder of the items actually belonged to her husband. She also had an original large framed photograph of my chapter members from 1920. And so that was phenomenal, because I've seen this image several times before, but I've seen a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. I had never seen an original picture before, and I never expected it to be so large. It's wider than the screen on my camera right now can be able to show you. So it was great to be able to recover that. And then one of our fraternity members resided next door to one of our other founders, Edward G. Irvin, here in Chicago. After that founder passed, the founder's wife gave all of his fraternal items to that brother who lived next door, who was also a close confidant of the founder. And so I convinced him to donate several precious fraternal artifacts to the fraternity, including the Founders Laurel Wreath Award, which is the fraternity's highest honor. All of the items I recover are cataloged and stored within the archives of fraternity's international headquarters. So when I started the national program, archive recovery program in 2013, we had I saw that we had so many things that I felt would be there. I was dismayed to see that we didn't have them. But I'm so very glad to know that after all these years that I've been doing this, many of the things that I just know they've got this. Mm-hmm. We have them now because of this program.
Wow, that's really neat to find. Oh my goodness! Wow. Yeah. So tell me, what are the future plans? That you guys are doing or have with all these items that you're collecting, the art, the artifacts, the paraphernalia, all the stuff. What are you guys planning to do with it?
So, of course, I plan to continue the promotion of the initiative to our members, and thereby, of course, acquiring them for the posterity of the fraternity's history and legacy. But just before the pandemic occurred, I had assembled a team of museum professionals, and we composed and signed a contract for them to come to the fraternity's international headquarters in Philadelphia. They were going to transform our existing space where we display our archives into a real museum. I mean, we've got a really great, we've got several rooms of great display pieces, but I really want to transform this into museum quality. So once the restrictions are fully lifted, we have every intention of getting back to this project. I continue to collect more items, and our inventory collection has grown. These items will be shown in a renovated Kappa museum space.
Okay. So do you guys plan, I know next year is your national convention. I think it's down here in Florida. Will
It
you
is. It
guys
will be in
do,
Tampa.
okay, will you guys do a display or something that, your members can see when they attend a conference?
I get asked that question all the time, and the answer is no.
See,
And
I
the
was,
only reason
I
why
was
the answer is
sneak
no,
in. I was trying to sneak in and go see.
well, the reason why the answer is no is because of a few reasons. One, I'm still writing this book, and I'm trying to get this book done, and that is such a huge endeavor to take on, to accumulate these things, and we have quite a bit, of course, already at our international headquarters, but we'd have to pack them all up, we'd have to
Mhm.
ship,
Yeah.
and then once we get to Tampa, we would have to find a local business that has the proper type of display cases to be able to adequately put them on display. And so it's a lot. And I live in Chicago. So that will be a lot of back and forth for me. And I wouldn't mind doing it. It's just the timing for it right now is really difficult with all the other things that I'm currently involved in, because this Kappa Archive Recovery Program is just one of the things that I'm doing right now. I wish I could say it was the only thing that I was doing, but I've got several things on my plate. So that's such a huge endeavor, and if you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you want to make sure it's done in excellence. And I know you guys are about achievement. So I
That's
know
right.
you're not going to. So now, how often do you go to the headquarters to just kind of check on things and make sure it's together and collecting things?
Well, prior to the pandemic, I think that I would typically be in Philly um, about 5, 6 times a year.
Oh, wow.
So I would come there for either the project that I'm working on, or to kind of update the archive collection, because when the stuff comes, it comes into my attention. They put it in the archive room, and I come there and I open the box, see what it is, conduct an inventory, log everything, put everything away. Um, is one of the things that I typically do when I come. So, but now, since the pandemic, which has been a little over 2 years now,
Mhm, mhm.
I haven't been there.
Oh, wow. So do you know if things are coming and just waiting for you?
Well, yeah. So what's been happening in the meantime is that we have one of the staff members there who is on the lookout for things that come regarding the program.
Mhm,
She's been instructed to open the box, um, and what she does, she takes a picture of the label from the box that has the person's name, or if there's some sort of letter along with the contents, she will provide that to me. I send everyone who donates a personal thank you letter,
mhm,
and I make them aware of what's going to happen with their artifacts that they send. And also, while we're speaking about that, especially since our audience is mostly or probably 100% Divine Nine, um, back when the Smithsonian Museum, the African American
mhm,
Museum of History and Culture, opened in DC, they contacted all of the people who would be in charge um, for their fraternity's history. So for myself, for Kappa, we've got one guy who sits in the chair, and that's me. For Alpha Kappa Alpha, as you know, you've got a committee
mhm.
that oversees these things. The same thing for Delta, and I imagine other organizations. Well, they contacted all of the Divine Nine and said, hey, look, what do you have? We need original items to be able to display. If you got something that you feel as though you can part with to be able to show the world what you're about, let's see them, and then we can go through the process of trying to examine if it's going to be something that's going to be right for the museum and for the exhibit. And so I contacted all the members throughout the fraternity back then, let them know what we were trying to do, and we collected quite a bit for the Smithsonian. I want everyone on tonight to know that this is an ongoing project. So this isn't just because they had the grand opening and now all the collections are closed. Museums are constantly looking for new artifacts. So if any of the members on the line happen to have some items that they think has not just great exposure for the sorority or the fraternity and should be housed at their locations, but also if it would have worldwide impact where you would really want something that you have to for the world to see it, because people come from all over to come to that museum. So if you have something, there is I can let you know after we get off the line. I can share the contact information for the curator for the Divine Nine exhibit that we have there. It's called Making a Way Out of No Way. I can put you in touch with that curator because she's always interested in finding new things.
Yes, that would be great. Because I went to the museum and Daryl, my husband, went and visited with me, and we saw that display, and I was like, oh, this is it right here.
Yeah.
So I don't have any more questions, and I see we had a couple of questions pop up. We had someone at KAPsi Museum. It's going to be amazing. Yes, I plan to be there if I can. Has anyone talked about an oral history project with seasoned members? And I know we talked about this, offline a little bit, that you guys have been visiting some of your, more elder members and just kind of collecting their story and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's a great question. So what I've done, and I've done this locally with members of my chapter, Chicago Alumni, what sparked this idea for me was one of our stalwart members passed away. And I was thinking, wow, I'd really love to just be able to have one more conversation with that guy. He's fantastic. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to let this be a lesson to me. I'm going to get these other senior members on tape. And so what I did is I started with the poll marks, which is our president. I started with the poll marks of the chapter, the most seasoned ones. I started with them to speak with them, get them on tape, let them talk about anything they want to talk about, mostly Kappa stuff and who they are and what was their Kappa journey and different things of that nature. And now their thoughts and things that they individually could only speak of, it lives forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to that point also about and this isn't so much of an oral history project, but I want everybody to hear this next thing that's kind of related to that. When you all have a banquet and you have a keynote speaker, some keynote speakers they're here or there. You'll have people who are just phenomenal, and you'll have some that are not so phenomenal, and you've got everything in between. But you don't know what you're going to get. So record them.
Yeah.
Record them, because the ones that are phenomenal, you're going to be wishing, the first thing you're going to think of, I wish somebody recorded this.
Yes.
And so whether it was less intriguing or not, you'll have it as part of your archives for your chapter or your region or whatever. You'll have it, and then people can always access it. People who weren't there, they'll get to hear someone who, let's say this is someone who's up and coming. It's not out of the ordinary. Our fraternity has done it, that has had our keynote speakers be an undergraduate, and an undergraduate will speak, be the keynote address person, and then 30 years later, he's the grand polemarch. So you never really know what you're going to get.
Right.
And you may really be holding on to a gem if you do that. So I would highly recommend folks to be able to take the opportunity whenever you have a keynote speaker, even at a casual event. If it's just somebody showing up to the chapter house or whatever, record it.
Yeah.
That's the age we live in nowadays anyway. When I was doing those video recordings I told you about, I had to break out a camcorder, set it on top of a tripod, zoom in just right, and it was a whole thing. Plug it into the outlet.
Yeah.
Now everybody's got a camera on their
Yeah.
phone, a video
Mm-hmm.
camera, really.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you use your phone, your iPad, or whatever you got, everybody's got accessibility to be able to do that on the spot.
Yeah, now with Zoom and what we're doing, you
Sure.
can, it's so much easier to capture their stories. So I don't see any other questions, but do you maybe some more questions while we're looking here? Do you have any final thoughts or any advice you want to give to the audience as a whole?
Well, the best advice that I could give to all members of Divine Nine, no matter what chapter they're in, no matter what organization you're in, um, what I found that happens in Kappa, being with complete honesty, lots of times there are individuals where they find that this position of historian, we need to have a historian for our chapter. Hey, you just sitting over there. Hey, you fill this seat. And that person has zero interest in doing the job, and what ends up happening, nothing gets done. So I'm not saying that everybody's got to do what I'm doing, to the extent that I'm doing it. All I'm saying is that if you're going to get somebody, try to find someone who has a passion or just a like of your history, of your fraternity or your sorority's history. Put someone like that in the role. They can do some really basic things, but those basic things are going to pay you dividends in the long run, even if they're just periodically standing up in front of chapter meeting and give an excerpt that reads something from your history book.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, it enlightens the members. It keeps your history alive, your legacy alive of people who have done really important things for your organization. So try to find some people who have a slight interest at the most of trying to preserve your history. And the last thing that I would have to say is um, one of the items that I gave you that you can display on the screen is I authored a manuscript. It's called the Kappa Archive Recovery Directive. And that directive gives some basic information to anybody. I mean, it's nothing esoteric about it. Anybody can, anyone from that's on this call this evening can have access and see it. But what it basically does, it has information in there that instructs folks that, hey, look, if you've got old photographs, you've got old documents, how do you store those things? Those things have heavy acid content the older that they are in the paper and the photo paper, and they degrade over time. Well, you can slow that process down by doing a few different things. You can, if your chapter stores things in a storage locker, the best thing to do is make sure the storage locker that you're picking is temperature and humidity controlled, because you want to slow down that process of degradation. Also, place those items, if you can, take them out of the plastic containers and put them in acid-free boxes and acid-free folders. That slows down that process. You want to do everything you can to preserve it. And then the last thing that you can do is do the same thing, that things that we do every day and you may not be thinking about it. Put that stuff in the cloud, scan it, scan all those pictures and documents and whatnot. And then if something should ever happen to them, you still have them. They're in the cloud. They're not on a thumb drive that you can lose. You won't lose that stuff in the cloud. And even I would even say back it up. Put it on a external drive. That would be great too. Back it up to make sure that nothing is foolproof. If something ever happens to the cloud, somebody forgets the password or whatever, you still have a backup. So those are some of the things that I would suggest to people for them to do.
I see we have this is a friend of mine who's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My sis, Dr. Ashley Preston, she asked about some tips for everyday people who may be looking to get into preserving history in general, maybe family members. And I think we talked a little bit about this, just having those conversations with our family members and talking about,
Right.
their history and what they know, and how we can keep their items and preserve it.
Yeah, well, to add on to that, I think this might be where Ashley is going with it. I did it with my family history. You do not have to be an expert, and people are usually kind of shy about things that they don't know much about. But I swear you will not break the internet if you try this. You go on, ancestry.com, you create an account, and you can, especially if you talk to those family members up front, because you have all the names of people and their relationships to one another. You go on there, and you can do this also with your organizations. I've done it for our founders. I've gone and I've done genealogical searches on all of them.
Wow.
And so you can do the same thing with your family.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be so surprised about the information that you learn and you find out there's so much information on there. And if you want to delve even deeper, you can do what I did, which is you pay a nominal fee to Ancestry and you can have a DNA test where other people who you don't realize are related to you, they've also done DNA. And then you'll find you've got cousins and uncles and all kinds of folks that you didn't realize that you had. And then that opens up your family tree even more, and you'll just, it's really addictive.
Yeah, it is. It is.
but
We've done
but I'm a nerd, so it's addictive for me.
that.
Uh,
Yeah.
because you'll start sometime in the morning. Next thing you know, it's like 9 o'clock at night, and you'll wonder what happened. You're just going down this rabbit hole. And
Mm-hmm.
so on my mom's side of the family, I was able to go back all the way to about uh, in the early 1850s, and I
Wow.
found um, one of my relatives. I think it's my fifth great grandmother on a plantation in Rome, Georgia.
Wow.
But that's where I got a block, and I just kind of I wasn't able to go further back than that. But what happens with research, no matter whether you're doing genealogical research or any other kind of research, the key is don't get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find yourself getting frustrated, or if you hit a block, like I hit this block, walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
You come back in a month or two, you'd be surprised about a lot of the other stuff that opens up, because a lot of these sites that contain newspapers, archived newspapers, and yearbooks, and all kinds of different things, they didn't have access to those things at one point, but then they that opens up and they get more stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that is a benefit to you, and you can find more things that way. And so the newspapers, archived newspapers, have been a great help in my research, because the black newspapers put everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say everything, I mean to the extent where, let's say myself and my wife come to visit you and your husband down there where you live, that would be in the paper.
Wow.
It would tell about the fact we took a trip, we came, and who we visited, and other people who were there at the party where we were all at. It would name everyone. And so things like that have allowed me to be able to find mostly my fraternity members is how I find them in the vintage newspapers. So and a shout out to one of my fraternity brothers, Robert S. Abbott, who was the founder of the Chicago Defender newspaper. The Chicago Defender is paper gold. It just has everything in it that you would ever want to know. If you want to go back to, he started the paper in around 1910, 1911, around there. So they're just there's just a wealth of history. So I would recommend that if you're doing research, um, don't discount those. Don't overlook the newspapers, the archived newspapers, and we have black newspapers all over the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Preston said, yes, black newspapers are such an important part of history, and it is. I'm newly in a history major at Jackson State, and that's where they send you. Check those their primary sources. So a question we had come through: how can we build intentionally about preservation in the newer members of our organization? So we're talking about, these brand new, aren't the neos that come in. They are excited, to wear our paraphernalia, do all the great stuff. But how do we draw them?
Well, first thing is that you have to make it part of your culture in your chapters, that this is something that is important. So if that, along with the other things that you're teaching them, then they will also value that. So it has got to be part of not so much a quote unquote curriculum. It's got to be just something you organically do. You let them know that these things are important, and then you teach them about how you preserve those things. So you spoke of earlier about the whole thing about we've all seen it, whether it's Greek shenanigans or some of these other different sites online where it shows some old white lady wearing a Kappa shirt. And everybody is all enraged, and they want to go storm the castle with pitchforks and torches because this lady's wearing a Kappa shirt. Well, you have to do some things to try to make sure that doesn't happen, because typically what happens is that it ends up in either Goodwill or Salvation Army or whatever, and then somebody buys it for $1. But here's the thing about that. If the more people that you educate about what you do about those things, that's not so much of a history thing, but I know that that's a red button hot topic for most folks. Everybody wants to know about that. So what you do, you got to be intentional about trying to make sure it doesn't happen. You educate your members about what to do. So if I've got an old Kappa t-shirt, which by the way, my project is not intended to get your t-shirt. I don't want your t-shirt with your wings under your arm. I don't want that. That's not what this project is for. But what you do is you teach them, hey, look, if you got an old t-shirt and it doesn't serve any purpose anymore, snip it up. And then throw it away, because people do garbage pick. So if somebody's going to garbage pick, they're not going to pick a shirt that looks like it belonged to a runaway slave. So you make it unwearable.
Right.
And then you discard it.
Right. That's such a good point. I never even thought about that, because I have t-shirts. I mean, I'm holding on to them for my girls, but I'm like, I cannot put this in the trash can. Like I refuse to do that. And I have one. The shirt I had when we crossed, man, that thing is had it. But that's smart. I'm gonna cut that up, because I don't want the old white lady out here wearing my letters.
Right. Yeah. So and nobody does, and it begets a repetitive problem that we haven't put our finger on yet. But we can do that. We can. That's an easy problem to resolve. That's easier than trying to recover things from 1920.
Right.
It's something we can resolve today.
Right. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for doing this. We have some technical difficulties, but we rounded it out well. I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me this evening. Daryl is asking me to shout out Harrison Reed Duke III. Outstanding presentation, brother historian, way to represent. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That's who pinned my husband, Daryl. So I have to shout out. I
love Brother Duke. Brother Duke is my hero.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brother Duke, because I'm getting shouted out over here. But thank you. Thank you to my husband, Daryl, who is assisting me, and to all the men of Kappa Alpha Psi. I applaud you as a Alpha Kappa Alpha woman for the work that you're doing. I hope everyone has enjoyed it this evening. Thank you, guys. Share. Please tell someone about this. We're doing more heritage. These guys, look forward to more coming from Heritage Salon. Mr. Scott, stay right there for me.
Okay, I sure will. And let me just say this one last thing before you let me go. I want to thank you for doing this. There's so many different things, projects that are important to Black history and our heritage. And this is just one of them. You didn't have to pick this tonight. So I appreciate you taking out the time and recognizing the value in it, not just to give a shout out to my fraternity, but also seeing the benefit for all of the D9 organizations, because the elite eight of the nine are all 100 years or older now.
Yes.
So we any of us that have not taken the time out to start trying to shore up those things, we'll lose them. And I don't want any of our organizations to lose that. So thank you so much for sharing this and giving me the opportunity to be able to present this information to your audience.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll be talking. Stay right there. All right, guys. Thank you so much and have a great evening.